All right. Well, good morning, Laura May. Thank you for chatting with me again. We decided to have another chat after our last one because we had some pretty good feedback from executive directors. And we were just chatting before we started recording about heading into the holidays. And I've heard a lot of people talk about compassion fatigue and the weight of responsibility and the trauma that we've all been experiencing over the past few months. So today we thought I would just love to hear more from you on how we as caregivers or people that are working in the front lines can work through and maybe lessen that weight of responsibility that we're all carrying so that we can have a nice relaxing holidays and 2021. Let's not just stop it at the holidays.
Yeah, well, it's the added stress of the holiday and then the realization that after the holiday, there'll be something else, right?
Yes.
It'd be,
Yeah.
okay, now it's the January or the February blues, or it's, the next thing. So you're right. It's a great time because we all know what that feels like to have that hustle and bustle. However, we're also in a unique time that we're in a consistent chronic, in the background perhaps, as well as the foreground, depending on how it's affecting us, trauma. We're within the storm of a catastrophic event, again, without an end zone, without an ending point. And so what we learn, or how we learn to look after ourselves currently, especially with the holiday pressure, are their tools and resources and self-awareness that can be taken into the rest of your life and can be applied and shared with the people in your life. So you learn it for yourself, you practice it for yourself, and then you automatically begin to be that leader and that role model for other people. It filters out, and because people are reaching out to one another in ways they just never thought they would, or for things that they never thought they would. So it's not a pressure on us so much as it is just a knowing, or a wonderful knowing, that we do help one another when we help ourselves. So it's a great reminder, if we hesitate to do something for ourselves, what a great reminder that every time we do, we're directly or indirectly affecting our community, whether it's our intimate circle community or the community at large, or even the global community, because we're taking good care of ourselves. So normally during the holiday season, we know that folks feel extra pressures in their situations, and then we we add to it, or we catapult it with, this unknown. So in prep for today, because I knew we were going to be talking a little bit about one of the last times we talked about how in nature, and just so you know, everybody, if you don't know my style, I'm going to make a point. I might seem like I'm going way off on a tangent, but I always come back and pick you up and make the point. So I'm going to make the point and answer what you're asking, Glenna, but with a little bit of a backstory for us to understand how humans work.
Okay.
So when we were talking last time, we were talking about water off a duck's back, and the idea that two ducks are in the pond and one gets in the way of the other. They have a bit of a squabble, and they flap their wings, and and then they let it go, and then it's released, as it were. They shake it off. Us humans, we don't necessarily shake off every little pressure and stress. If anything, we've been trained in our culture to stuff it, pretend it's not there, talk ourselves out of it. But what we know is that it actually doesn't go anywhere. It stays with us until we release it in some way. You can think of it from the perspective of an energy. You know, you have an emotion, a feeling, a response. It is like an energy that comes in, and it needs to be noticed, acknowledged, and released back out at some level. So in some of the research with Peter Levine in somatic experiencing, when we talk about trauma, when a person has had extreme trauma, that we work with the body to release that somatic, the experiencing of it, because the human, and in the theory of Peter Levine and somatics, is that the animal world or the mammal world stayed pretty much the same, that they shook it off after something would happen in the wild. They have a threat, there's something chasing them, they have a squabble, but then, or their fear factor, but then not that long ago, they're, you know, if it's a deer that's been chased by a lion and gets away, before you know it, it's back grazing and relaxing and doing its thing, not carrying the experience. In somatics, we know with humans, we've evolved, the neocortex evolved to the point where we can wonder and ponder and be philosophical. But with that evolution came a more sensitivity to traumatic events. And we don't shake it off. So we absorb it. And so it could be what some people would deem a minor traumatic event or a major traumatic event. Ultimately, it's still something that feels like trauma is anything that threatens the physical, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, safety related experience of the human. That's trauma. So we can all relate to that. So I don't want everyone to think, oh, this is all about us talking about, we're all walking around traumatized, so much as it is just this awareness of our bodies, awareness of our feelings. And we haven't always taught that, right? We haven't always said, hey, you know, really coming out and looking at how we feel and noticing it in the body. Like, where do you feel that in the body? And then releasing it isn't really something we necessarily talk about, or is an education system. I believe that in character development, health, and all the new curriculums coming forward, that we actually are now. Mindfulness is being taught in schools. When I say character development, just meaning that sense of self, right? Mm-hmm. Self-awareness, awareness of the body is being incorporated into our mainstream education systems across the world now, for that reason alone, that we are seeing the repercussions of us not acknowledging, stuffing down how we're feeling. So the recommendation for the tool in the toolbox today is that you know that about yourself as a human, that you don't necessarily shake it off. You think it went somewhere, but it didn't, unless you consciously, and what I mean by consciously is you bring it to your attention, you become aware of it, you shed light on it. If you're not consciously aware that this is how you're feeling, or you're saying, oh, I feel angry and I shouldn't, so you put a story to it, to the emotion, the experience of the emotion, then it just moves into the body somewhere and hangs out there and until further notice, as it were. So we're running around, we're stressed out. It's almost like a layering. And we know that we're not always clear. And with children, because they don't express themselves verbally, sometimes it's just that a child has had these seemingly little things going on in their life that can layer up to the point where they're really stressed, or they just have a day. Well, where did that come from? That happens to us as well as adults. So what to do on a daily basis to take care of ourselves and to take care of that emotion is to make sure that that you know that it's there, and and identify the emotion itself. So let's say, maybe you could give me an example, Glenna, of a time when you've had an emotion come up. Can you think of an emotion recently?
Worry.
Pardon?
Worry.
Worry. Okay. And so worry in and of itself is an energetic, it's an emotion. It's a feeling, and it has a vibration to it. If you don't attach the story to why you're worried, then you're much more likely to release it from the body and the experience. So the first step is to identify the emotion. So it's I'm worried. I am worried. Okay. And you locate it in the body. So where, Lana, do you think it is in your body? The worry. Not so much why you're worried. Don't worry about the story part. But where do you think it could could be holding that in the body?
I would say I feel it like here.
Here.
Like
okay, like in
heavy,
the heart center.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel worried, and I feel it in my heart center. Okay, now you've brought, it's almost like a computer program in a way. It is a file running in the background. You pull the file up, you look at the file and say, oh, there's worry. Oh, it's located in this region of the body. Okay, so you're shedding light on it. You're looking at it. Okay, then remember, simultaneously, you're not necessarily focusing on the reason why you're worried, because that actually gives it more energy and creates possible layering to that worry. So instead, just say, oh, it's worry. Okay, neutralize it in that way. And this can be challenging because we like to go to the story. So we can either shift it, like give her, oh, I shouldn't be worried about that. Or we stuff it. Well, that doesn't feel good, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there. So you don't go to the story. You get to actually look at the emotion proper. Worry as an energy shows up. Here it is. I feel it in the body. And then you can breathe through where you're holding it, right? So you're like, I feel worry. I release that worry. So think of the duck's back kind of idea. He shakes it off. Shake off. It's like you're bringing the breath in, you're drawing attention to that area of the body, and then you're releasing it. So the deep breaths, you can do that until you start to feel better. So even try it right now with me. You just kind of breathe in, and then I release. Now you can take it even a step further. Let's say it was, you almost notice that there is a bit of a layering. Like I feel worried in it, and it has more emotion to, or has more, I guess, an energetic or electric charge to it. You could consciously bring in your physical exercise that is needed anyway in our self-care into the releasing of it. So is there something that you do to look after yourself physically on a daily basis? Like, do you walk? Do you bike? Do you dance?
I walk a lot, would be the most consistent.
Okay. So again, the challenge is not to bring the story in necessarily, but if it's really been an energetic charge in your system, it's like you walk it. Well, hello there, worry. I see you. I feel you in my stomach. I'm moving the energy of this. I'm walking this out. I'm walking out the worry. And you might find that as you breathe through, you're walking it through, that something else likes to pop up. Oh, great, good. Now I can, I'm actually overwhelmed as well. Okay. Hello, overwhelm. I see you. Where is that located in my body? So where would overwhelm be in you, do you think, Glenna?
Oh, I feel like overwhelm would be like my neck, like that sort of like just that tension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For sure. Just that. So you're walking, worries moved, right? you don't have a story, so it's moved. And then, oh, the overwhelm's showing itself now. Ah, I see I say see, meaning not necessarily with the eyes, but with the internal eye, like that knowing system within the body, is sometimes is what I mean by I see you. I acknowledge you. Oh, you're sitting on my shoulders. Oh, I feel that. Oh, okay. So breathing through until it starts to move, until you start to, and you're not stuffing it, you're not pretending it's not there, you're not attaching a story that says you're not allowed, or that, you know, the perfectionism might kick in and all that related to the story. So it gives you an opportunity. We are neutralizing the experience, kind of like a duck doesn't take it personally that the other duck in the pond was like, you know, in his way. He's just like, or she or they are just, you're in my way, I'm in your way, wah, 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 and there's no story. So we're meaning based. We've evolved. We're incredible beings in our evolution, but that sensitivity to being sensitive, right? We're so much more susceptible to being sensitive to things. And then if we feel our safety, physical safety, emotional safety, security, our basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of need, if they feel threatened, then we're just that much more susceptible to the emotions that get stirred up. So it's the other ways you could do that. I love the example of the walking. If you're not a walker, maybe you're someone who likes to dance around your living room, or you could, jog it out, or yell it out in your car on your way home from your office.
Yeah.
It's stretching, yoga, but it's that conscious intention, that awareness that that's what you're doing. You're taking control of the experience and having it's like a co-creative relationship in a sense. Sovereignty, I believe, is a co-creative relationship. Sovereignty meaning freedom. How can we be free? Well, one aspect is the awareness of the emotion, and then not being so, even bringing a second emotion in, being so fearful of that emotion that it just absorbs into the system, right? So as for, there might be some questions out there in this as you're listening. Well, what about if it is something that I've stored over my years? What if that pops up? Do the same thing. Oh, where's that? I'm cooking eggs in the morning, and this wave of emotion comes up. Look at the wave of emotion. What is it? And if, there are lots of really cool tools out there. If sometimes we forget even the basic emotions, and that's people might put pressure on themselves. Well, I need to know what all those emotions are. Not necessarily. Not all of us know what we're feeling. So if you wanted to do some research even on those basic feelings and where they can be stored in the body. We haven't traditionally, generally speaking, taught what's going on, to ask ourselves what's going on in our bodies. And until it gets so loud, and then we're like, what's that noise in my body? So it's that daily practice of noticing the body, noticing what we're holding. And then we can share it with other people. If it's a really negative emotion that's having difficulty moving because the thoughts and the story come up, if you're having difficulty separating that out, then one of the things you can do is almost like a brain dump, because we've evolved into these beings of philosophical beings, and ability to think and ponder and wonder and muse, but also ruminate and concern, and we've evolved to that. Sometimes it really is a challenge to separate the story. So one of the practices we do in the Joy Journal is we write out the thoughts that we're having, because thoughts create feelings create actions, and actions create results. So it's noticing the thought you're having. if it's at that point where the story is tough to remove the story or to separate from the story, what thought are you having? Write those thoughts down that don't feel good, right? Anything that doesn't feel good. And then you're now, instead of they're kind of running the show by repeating themselves within your head, they're almost like a story going on in your head, and you feel like it's only going on with you. When you write them down, you pull them out of the head and onto the paper, and now you can see them and you can neutralize them a little bit. They're not you, they're just what's happening inside your head. They're thoughts. Thoughts are things. They're not you. They sound like you, they dress like you, but they're not you. So it's being able to pull them out in a sense and putting them down on paper. Once they're down on paper, okay, how can I move these ideas, these thoughts that I'm having in my head, to something that feels better?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can get it all, almost like what we call a brain dump, where you just, I'm never going to get through this week. I feel so stressed. Things don't work out for me. And then you look at them and you apply almost a neutrality to them, because you realize they're just thoughts. They're not you. And then you say, okay, what could I be thinking different? What could I think differently here? Well, I could think of, okay, so far I've actually done really well this week, or I'm doing the best I can, is a neutralizing thought to the first thought of, I'm never going to get through this week, or I'm not good at what I'm doing. You neutralize it by marrying it or matching it with a thought that feels more general, right? It feels like, yeah, well, you know what? I'm doing the best I can. It is a pandemic after all.
Yeah.
So you look at your list, your brain dump, and you can actually change those thoughts by bringing the first ones up. You have a choice around how to think. Well, how do you take on that choice, or how do you apply the choice? Is seeing the thoughts for what they are. They're just things. And then changing your mind about them by matching them with something that feels better. And then you take the piece of paper and you rip it up. That's a non-productive thought processes. They're not helping you through your week. They're not mending the body. They're not allowing you to flow. They're not allowing the newness and the creativity and the enjoyment of the moment. They're in your way. And I am very much a proponent for acknowledging them and saying thank you to those thoughts, because all of it helps us to know what we do want and what we don't want, what feels good and not feels good. So we want to welcome all of it. I think we'll find we especially welcome it when we now know that we don't have to continue to agree to it, that it's not us, and that we have a choice in what we're going to be thinking instead. So I find it quite cathartic to rip the heck out of those pages and recycle them, of course. So those are just, little tidbits there. There's so much out there now on the body-based experiencing that people can do their own research around. So
I wanted to, wow, time flies. But I wanted to ask a question. So I'm kind of, as you're speaking, processing and like how this sort of fits to what you're saying. So I just want to ask something specifically around compassion fatigue, or sort of the weight of responsibility. And I'm thinking that through. And is that an emotion that, so as caregivers, and that feeling of, I was analyzing, okay, is that worry that I need to work through that? So maybe as an executive director or someone working in a nonprofit, that I'm worrying about the safety of my clients, and that's keeping me awake at night, and that sort of responsibility of other people's safety. Can we just dive into that a little bit? Because I'm hearing a lot about that.
Yeah. So in the 12-step program, which is a religious-based program, so I'm not religious necessarily in but there is a prayer that we could secular, oh my gosh, make secular.
Yeah.
Secularize, there it is. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we could just put, instead of God, we could put life. This life, from my perspective, we all are experiencing life. So we can make it more neutral and just call it life. Life grant me, right? So it's the humbleness of accepting that life, you're here and life brought you here. Life grant me the serenity, meaning the peace, right? The peace within myself, to accept the things I cannot change. So when it comes to that part, Glenna, from my perspective, I'm an empath and I'm a caregiver. And so I understand that it always feels like there's just not enough and we're not doing enough. And there's that pressure. God grant me this serenity, or life grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change, means in the moment, being able to come back to yourself and back to center and put on a logical lens, like a neutral, not logical lens, is this, in this moment, is this mine? And can I actually do something in this moment? And chances are the answer, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, is no. Other than me getting my rest so that I can be the best version of myself when I wake up in the morning, to show up in the capacity that I show up, is me doing something. And so when it comes to compassion fatigue and that sense of burnout, it's that it absolutely can feel like you're never doing enough, especially if it's difficult for you to separate what other people are experiencing and what part is what you actually have control over. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
Yes.
So life grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, which we all, that's a given in our work, right? We give all the time. We're givers. And so we're always looking for ways. That just everybody, I hope that's listening to this, knows in their heart of hearts that they're already doing that. They were born that way, as it were, doing that for folks. So they made a career out of that. They were already doing it and they made a career out of it. Now they're getting paid to do it, or you know what I mean, where they're volunteer paid in the sense of this is their life service. This is their life work. Life grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom, to know the difference is that what is mine and what is not, what is okay at 3 o'clock in the morning to, when I say okay, not permission wise, but what is true that I actually have a say over. And if you have to get up and go and write down the action steps you are going to take in the morning after the rest you're going to have, because you'll show up as that rested within reason. I know it's hard sometimes to get our rest, but you're being your best friend, talking yourself through, but is this actually yours, Glenna? Is this yours? Can you actually logically do something in this moment? No. Okay. Then what do you need to do? You need to go to sleep. Why? Because you need to be rested so you can show up in the capacity that you need to for the next day. So it's slowing it down. It's the gentleness with self. It's the separating who you are from others in their walk. And if you're finding that you're, as we said, as humans, we're more susceptible to trauma. If you're finding that you're really having difficulty, that you're super heightened, I guess we would say, like your sense of response is extra heightened, then what can you do? Who can you reach out to? What kind of resources and services can you bring in to get some support to help you tease out separate out what is actually yours in this situation and what is someone else's. I've always been a proponent for many heads in a room, like many minds together making decisions, especially if we're overwhelmed. Talk with somebody that will say to you, that's not yours, and it's okay for you to set that down. And or you are seeing it as really big here, let's chunk it down, because overwhelm tends to be that we just see everything at once instead of being able to chunk it down to, okay, what do I need to deal with in this moment, the slowing down. And then, okay, maybe talking with a colleague, someone who, or a friend or a partner, someone who can kind of tease that out with you and say, okay, in this moment, what can you do? I know it's going to sound cliche by now, but ultimately us doing this individual emotion work, releasing, asking ourselves what we need, noticing our own bodies, that is the first step to helping the world. Personal transformation first, always. Because we've talked about it, that, you really do need to check, recheck within the self before you're able to show up in the world in that way. Or it starts to go the opposite, right? You start getting to that point where you do start experiencing fatigue piece to the compassion. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Yeah. And I know just even early in COVID, in my mind, it was really helpful to think about like what is outside of my control. And so separating that was really helpful to me. But I think it was more so, when I was worrying about friends and family and that sort of stuff and other people's actions. But funny enough, I hadn't really thought about it more from a work perspective. And I think that thinking about what's not yours is a really important distinction.
Yeah. And us acknowledging that it's coming at us at all angles, especially when we've positioned ourselves, or we've arrived to, life has brought us to the planet, we've arrived giving, we've arrived caring. That's who we are. It's there's no separation. Then our intimate relationships know us as that as well. So we're coming home to relationships that know we're that caregiver. So it's practice, but it's a boundary piece. It's being able to set a boundary. It starts with our own asking ourselves, okay, is this actually mine? What part of this is mine? What part of this am I okay with? And then letting go. So if we're caregivers, it's pretty much in every corner, facet of our lives that we're looking to serve. So this can be new for some folks in asking that question. What do I actually have control over? What is actually mine? And the perfectionist, the giver, they all kind of seem to be, wrapped in together. So I need to be good at this. And so it's that check, recheck with self. It's like actually being good at not being good at stuff is okay too, right? Allowing yourself to just be human. Yeah. Who is susceptible to trauma, right? And
Yes.
we're in a traumatic experience, a sustained, not sure when it's going to end traumatic experience currently.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Laura May. I hope that today's chat helps all of our friends, be conscious of the emotions that they're feeling, letting go of the stories, not attaching the stories to them. That was a big one for me, because I think that's where the brain then goes. You get the piling up of everything. So I really loved that point. And especially as we get to the holidays, thinking about how we can put some stuff down that's not ours to have some downtime over the holidays. So thank you so much for sharing yourself with us again.
You're welcome.